You're standing on a verge where the road forgets itself and becomes rumor. Before the sun has chosen a color, engines murmur like distant bees. The air is cold enough to nip the teeth. Metal ticks as if cooling, though the night has never been warm. A hedgerow cleaves the wind into thin papers of sound, a gear's cautious bite, a chain's private rattle, the soft fricative of rubber and grit. You breathe. It smokes out white and vanishes. Someone coughs far down the lane. Another world inhales with you. Before we drift further, if stories told in whispers are your kind of thing, take a moment to subscribe. Tell us where you're listening from, or which image lingers when the engines fade. You're listening to Echoes of War. You don't know the name for this yet. You only know the way roads hold secrets, the way they tend the weight of men and machines until the weight changes them. In the ditch, damp hay smells of iron and old rain. A map, creased, thumbed, unsure of its own borders, flutters in a pocket like a caged moth. From the fields comes the neat arithmetic of larks, and behind it, a taller sum, something grinding, gathering, learning to move as one body. The first glimmer lies low, as if light were embarrassed to arrive here. It touches fence wire, turns it into a line of small suns. It brushes a bicycle leaning against a post, gives its bell the shy wink of a coin. You lift your hand, and the air lifts with it, clear, chilled, expectant. On the far lane a motorcycle ghosts past, its rider swallowed in grey, scarf snapping like a flag of breath. It does not belong to this quiet, and so it defines it. You try to listen beyond the sounds for what makes them necessary. Beyond the motor, orders. Beyond the orders, fear with a uniform on. Fields inhale. Village chimneys breathe low and slow. Some kitchen a kilometre away learns that flour is lighter than grief and still chooses bread. Meanwhile, on some staff table, a pencil taps the edge of a river on paper, and the river, flattered, forgets that it has banks. Years later, they will give a clean name to what is still only a pressure in the lungs, a density in the morning like weather preparing to confess. They will say it was swift, as if speed were the same as destiny. They will say the gates opened as though of their own accord. They will talk about maps, about arrows that fattened as they ran, about bridges that decided which side they loved. But here, before the nouns harden, you are inside verbs, waiting, moving, smelling, listening, bracing. Wind combs the wheat into thoughts. A line of poplars keeps time with a rhythm you can't hear yet, a drum line that hasn't learned its name. Somewhere to the east, a forest thins into a road, and the road thickens into an intention. Men lace boots, tug straps, slap fenders with affection or superstition. Eyes blink more than usual. Dust makes excuses. A cloud breaks apart and reforms as if rehearsing formations no cloud should know. You step a little closer to the lane and see, in the tar's faint sheen, the sky rehearsing a different day, blue trying on grey, grey trying on silver. A bird crosses that false sky and leaves no mark. A truck will cross and leave many. Silence rearranges itself around the knowledge of this. A church bell tests one note and decides morning is not offended by it. You could be anywhere, but you are not. You are in a place where borders are about to become verbs as well. The smell of petrol sharpens. Leather and canvas present their credentials. A field telephone warbles like a bird that learned the wrong song. Within you, something switches from wondering to knowing. Not the why, not the when, only the soon. A dog barks twice and is convinced. The road hums. Its hum grows teeth. You are standing in spring that can't admit itself. Frost holds to the ditch's shadow. Sunlight is a rumor of warmth and nothing more. On the verge, a crushed wildflower looks like a small flag that has changed sides too late. Your breath steadies. You count. Not numbers, but heartbeats. There will be counting in many places today. Shells, kilometers, bridges, men. Most of the tallies will be wrong. The first truck appears as the answer to a question you didn't hear asked. Canvas, rivets, a nose that believes in itself. Behind it, another, and another. The road decides. Dust rises like an oath. Chapter 1. Maps that thought they. The dill that waited. You lay the map flat, and it refuses to be flat. It buckles at the rivers, grows hills where fingers have worn it thin, trembles at borders like a horse at a stream. On its surface the dill is a line of blue certainty. In the world it is water, cold, with moods. Somewhere a Belgian officer runs a hand along his jaw and says the line will hold because the line must hold. In a French staff car, another finger taps Louvre, Wavre, Gemblux, beads on a rosary of intention. Men who have trained for the last war prepare to fight it again, because the last war is the only one that has ever finished. Your breath fogs in the canvas light of a command tent. Cups clink. Enamel chips confess their histories at the rim. On a field table, rulers march like small, obedient bridges across possibilities. The plan, call it the Dill Plan, wants to save Belgium by entering it. British columns will swing up, French First Army will stride east, Belgium itself will brace. If speed can be tidy, this is how. Move to meet the blow, fix it on the line, trade space for time in increments small enough to believe in. Outside, dawn is a pale chalk mark. Trucks idle in rows, their breath coiling low as if afraid of heights. A gun crew laughs too loudly at a small joke and then apologizes to the morning. Boots thump in twos and threes. The earth has learned to count men by their souls. A colonel lifts his head and listens past the camp, to birds, to distance, to what the distance carries. The sound he's waiting for hasn't learned to be honest yet. It comes as mutter, it will become proof. You stand over the map and feel it arguing with you. It knows what you want roads to do. It does not trust that roads agree. It knows what bridges promise under peacetime feet. It knows that forests can be solid on paper and porous in weather. Someone draws an arrow with too much confidence. The arrow thickens like a boast. The Ardennes that whispered. To the southeast, a darkness is polite enough to call itself forest. On paper, the Ardennes is a gentleman, dense, slow, unwelcoming to haste. On the ground, it is a theatre that learned to move from backstage. Quiet paths, logging tracks, gullies, long seams where rock has loosened. At dawn, trunks hold the night for a few moments longer. Under them, engines curb their pride and crawl. The breath of machines here is careful. Drivers lean forward as if gravity were a religion. Tanks listen to their own weight negotiating roots and stones. If steel can tiptoe, it does so now. In compartments tight as oaths, men smell oil, wool, damp bread, and the inside of their own fear. A staff officer, coat unbuttoned despite the chill, writes a phrase that will later sound inevitable. Concentrate, penetrate, exploit. At the time, it is only a wish with verbs attached. Trees close ranks and open them again as columns pass. From above, if above were watching, the movement would look like water finding seams in rock. Maps had called it impassable. But impassable is a matter of politeness. With enough insistence, it learns new manners. Bridges, wooden, narrow, considerate of wagons more than tanks, feel the test of tracks and decide to be brave. Sappers stand by with timbers and nerve. River names, Semoys, Our the Meuse, lift their heads to watch. You think about the arrogance of circles drawn on paper, about how a pencil believes it can tell a ridge to be less itself. Here, modesty is the only wisdom. The forest is older than orders. It accepts them the way an elder accepts noise from children, tolerant, then stern, then amused. Daylight climbs through branches in slices. Each slice gives a face a different age. Sudan, where banks forgot to be walls. By the time the columns find open country, the road has learned a new grammar. Nouns become momentum, adjectives become dust, conjunctions are bridges. A city whose name will come to taste of haste, Sudan, sits quiet by the Meuse, hands folded, a book open on its lap. Civilians, who have raised children and bred more often than flags, watch the river as if it can advise them. A sentry on the western bank rubs a coin between finger and thumb. It shines, then dulls, then warms to the skin again. The river, on the map, is a blue no. In the world, it is a blue. Convince me. At its edge men unroll boats like arguments. Artillery, somewhere back where the earth is willing to be rearranged, picks a stanza and repeats it. Shells write commas into the far bank. Smoke supplies adjectives. Fear edits. A man crouched behind a low wall thinks how strange it is that the body's oldest wish, to stay whole, can feel disloyal to the line on paper. Bridges grow in hours where masonry had needed months. Pontoons accept weight as a lesson. Somewhere a commander says, "Push," and the word travels like weather. Small groups cross, then larger ones. Fire learns to be late. Defenders learn how quickly a rumor becomes a fact when it walks across water. Under the span, the Meuse pretends not to notice men teaching it new meanings. From a nearby hill, you see it not as heroics but as physics. Mass finds a seam. Pressure becomes path. The river is crossed not once, but in threads that braid into a rope, and the rope, once pulled, draws the day forward on its pulley. Behind the bridgeheads, machines queue with the impatience of plans. A private with a chipped tooth smiles at nothing and everything, joy as refusal, defiance as a kind of prayer. The sickle that bent toward the sea. Some plans are born with a tidy name and only later earn the mystery inside it. Call this one a sweep, a curve, a sickle that wishes to harvest not wheat but certainty. Once the river's far bank admits the weight, the road becomes appetite. South of the old killing fields, men move with a speed that feels impolite. Over farmland that knows plough more than tread, over crossroads that have chosen their loyalties by traffic rather than flags, the columns run. At their edges, radio voices braid and unbraid. Orders come as brief, bright sparks. Continue. Exploit. Ignore the flanks if the center can sing. Somewhere in that weaver name settles in. A general who enjoys the company of momentum, another who trusts maps less than engines. They are not the story. The story is simpler. A door that had been declared locked, then found to be merely stiff. To the north, in confidence neat enough to be fragile, infantry brace on the dill and fight with the courage of good intentions. The line holds here, buckles there, demands a price everywhere. But the story's grammar has shifted. The subject is elsewhere now, turning its claws toward the sea. At crossroads called by small names, confusion arrives dressed as certainty. Units look left for friends and find strangers. The left flank's shadow lengthens toward the coast. You sit on the fender of a halted truck and feel the engine's heat conduct into bone. Flies have learned the new geography and attend it. A runner arrives, breath slicing his tongue, delivers a note that weighs more than paper should. The driver reads it, nods once, and the truck becomes a sentence again, verb first. Civilians, whose maps were bread and water. None of this happens on an empty stage. Between the arrows move towns that have never learned to pronounce strategy. A mother folds a dress into a suitcase that is mostly photographs. A baker slams dough as if he can punch time back into shape. On roads that are supposed to serve crops and church on Sundays, prams and wagons and bicycles mingle with staff cars and scouts. Prayer mixes with petrol until both smell of grief. You pass a family standing at a fork and not choosing. They look at a signpost whose arms disagree. One toward a city that may already have become a rumor, one toward fields where a ditch might be safer than a wall. The father turns the map sideways, as if its truth might lie in a different orientation. The child, face hidden by a scarf and the care of the adults, holds a loaf, warm enough to make a theology of it. A convoy, polite, splits to pass around them like a river around an island. At a small station, a whistle commands a train to be more than steel. It obeys, but its obedience is slow. People fill carriages, then roofs, then hopes not built for this weight. Somewhere a bicycle bell rings twice as if to say, "Excuse me," to history. A cow stands in a doorway and chews as if mulling a treaty. At dusk, fields glisten with the sweat of decision. At night, the sky becomes an index of what burns. On the other side of radios. If you put your ear to the world now, you can hear the sound of decisions outrunning explanations. Wireless sets hiss like small seas. Operators cradle headphones the way midwives hold moments. Codes move through air with the oblivious grace of birds. Some are heard, some land where they must, some arrive late and are archived by tragedy. Somewhere, across the line, a headquarters thinks the thrust is faint and the feint is thrust, and the day gets away from it like a horse that has remembered it is fast. Here, in the cab of a truck that smells of canvas promises, you watch the road unspool into late afternoon. On the verge, poppies are impertinent with red. A field gun with a chipped trail rests like a beast that has just drunk. A corporal rubs the edge of a coin, always that coin, as if polish were a spell. You fold the map. It complains, then allows itself to be smaller. In your pocket, its corners worry holes in the cloth. Paper is a patient knife. When you take it out again, the rivers have shifted by the smallest, most important margins, where bridges now live that yesterday did not, where units are no longer in their boxes, where arrows, thicker, darker, more certain, have found the coast in their future tents. Night lowers its visor. Engines idle with the soft violence of sleep held at bay. Men remove boots and find their feet. Feet remove men and find the ground. Somewhere a radio reads a new place name as if tasting it. A port, a beach, a possibility. Stars come on, indifferent and accurate. The chapter ends where the road becomes hush. You sit with the map on your knees and let the paper cool beneath your hands. Out beyond the hedgerow, a river remembers how to be only water again, just for a few hours, just until the next sentence begins. Chapter 2. The Sky That Forgot to Wait. Engines that drew on the sky. You look up before you mean to. The sound finds you first, not loud, but layered, like cloth being torn at a great distance. Engines. Many. Some nearer, some thinking about being near. The air itself seems to rehearse their arrival. It tightens, waits, and then lets go. Down here, on the roads that braid through the Ardennes and the Meuse Valley, men and machines inch north and west, a pilgrimage of belief in plans already outdated. Columns stretch like paragraphs that have lost their punctuation. Each lorry hums its own sentence. Together they make a novel of movement. The morning light is still wet on the fields. From above, if you could see yourself, you'd be only a dot between commas, a soldier or a driver, or a messenger no one will remember by name. The engines write their own grammar on the clouds, commas of condensation, full stops of sudden dives. Every sentence ends in dust. A farmyard glints with water troughs, a mirror for fate. Horses, still trusted where petrol is scarce, shy at the unseen sound. Someone shouts, not at the sky but at luck. Luck does not listen today. The first shadows arrive like handwriting over the land. Precise, foreign, swift. You know what follows. The air turns metallic, the way it did in the last war just before the whistle of shells. Only this time it's higher, faster, personal. When the first bombs fall, they do not roar. They sigh, a long exhalation that ends in rearrangement. Grass lifts as if remembering how to fly. A convoy bends, tries to scatter, discovers there's nowhere to scatter to. Between trees, camouflage nets flicker, betrayed by movement. A truck jackknifes, spilling men who are still boys, still learning that the ground is not always loyal. Smoke climbs and learns to be a weather system. The air tastes of powdered road, of oil gone sour. You cough, and it sounds like someone else's voice. Roads that became traps. By midday, the roads stop being geography and start being evidence. Abandoned carts, bicycles twisted into question marks, boots without owners. Dust hangs so thick it becomes a curtain between moments. Every few minutes a siren loops overhead, a thread pulling panic through cloth already torn. You ride in a staff car that refuses to believe it's lost. The driver keeps the engine steady, as if steadiness itself were protection. On both sides of the road, fields burn in tidy rectangles. Barns, haystacks, a church roof that glows like confession. The map on your knee is useless now. The lines have become a prayer with no translation. A formation of bombers passes westward, neat as geometry, cruel as logic. Each one drops silver shapes that fall slower than time but faster than faith. Somewhere behind, anti-aircraft guns bark their anger, each shell a question shouted upward. The sky does not answer. It continues drawing. At a crossroads, refugees pause to let a column of tanks pass. Women clutch bundles. Men push prams with boxes instead of babies. The line between soldier and civilian dissolves into shared fear. Dust coats everything the same color. Uniforms, bread, memory. When the planes return, everyone dives for the same ditch. A child's wooden toy floats in a puddle, face down, its wheels spinning. Later, silence returns not as peace but as fatigue. You count breaths because counting people has become impossible. The road hums faintly, not from engines but from heat, as if remembering them. A single aircraft remains above, a dot pacing the blue, patient as fate. Command without gravity. Inside a chateau that smells of wax and worry, generals debate the shape of the invisible. Maps bloom across tables. Telephone wires tangle like roots seeking truth. Orders leave the room and evaporate before they reach the field. The air outside is louder than hierarchy. A radio crackles. Bridges lost, units encircled. The Meuse no longer a sentence but a comma. Someone whispers, counterattack. Another whispers, too late. The phrases mean the same thing now. No one mentions retreat. They call it elastic defense, as if words could stretch history back into form. You stand by the window, look out through glass that shakes with every distant explosion. The gardens are still perfectly symmetrical, as though war respects geometry. A gardener, too old to flee, waters tulips that will not notice occupation. Above, contrails intersect in deliberate mathematics. One line crosses another, and somewhere beneath, a decision hardens into loss. When dusk falls, the chateau glows with lamplight and denial. Outside, the road beyond the gate is a necklace of embers, each ember a village deciding how much of itself to remember tomorrow. The fall in slow motion. Night is no longer protection. Bombers come by sound now, guided by flares that drift like slow stars. You lie in a shallow trench and watch the sky conduct its own orchestra. White, red, green, each color meaning something to someone with a headset miles away. The ground trembles not from impact but anticipation. Each pause between raids feels like mercy testing its patience. Somewhere near, a soldier hums to himself, a lullaby for no one in particular. Another whispers a prayer he learned before he knew what surrender meant. Far off, the Meuse gleams where fires paint it. Bridges sag, rivers choke with debris. Doors, wheels, once alive things. A horse, riderless, drifts downstream, mane bright as phosphorus. The air smells of cordite and milk, absurdly human. When dawn finally finds the ruins, it hesitates. The sun seems unwilling to illuminate what it must inherit. Birds fly low, confused by the new topography of smoke. The first French units retreat westward through villages that no longer answer to names. Children, you glimpse them only as silhouettes, hold hands and look at the horizon as if expecting it to apologize. Above, the sky is clean again, too clean, like a sheet turned down on an empty bed. No engines, no threat, only silence so thick it feels rehearsed. You walk to what had been a house, now a pattern of bricks and memory. Through a window frame without glass, you look up. The sky stares back, blameless, empty, still. It has forgotten everything it just did. Chapter 3. The Coast That Learned to Wait. The roads that pointed to water. The roads change language long before they reach the sea. Dust turns to salt. Engines taste it first. Men cough and taste it next. Every mile west is a question answered by silence. You move with a column that is no longer an army so much as a migration. Trucks, bicycles, carts, each heavy with the kind of belongings people think will matter later. They do not. The road narrows where it meets hedges. The line of vehicles widens where hope panics. A dog runs alongside for half a kilometer and then stops, confused by its own loyalty. To the north, smoke marks towns that have forgotten their names. To the south, fields hold bodies that look like punctuation between sentences the earth is still trying to read. Somewhere in between, radios whisper about regrouping, about a line that will hold. There is always a line that will hold. But the map has become an open wound. Each new report bleeds into it. By afternoon, the first smell of tide enters the air, faint and metallic. The men notice it before they admit it. Someone says, "We're close," but his voice doesn't know if that means safety or corner. Dunkirk before the name. The town is smaller than rumor promised. Its church tower blinks between columns of smoke. Cobbled streets echo with the slap of boots and the stutter of engines that no longer believe in themselves. Somewhere, a piano plays one final chord. It might be wind through a window frame, or it might be goodbye pretending to be music. The beach is both enormous and insufficient. Sand stretches farther than courage, yet never far enough. You stand at the edge of it and see the channel lying flat as a mirror that refuses to show the future. On the horizon, ships hover like punctuation marks waiting for the sentence to end. Orders reach the sand in tatters. Hold here, form lines, destroy equipment that cannot be carried. Men obey and disobey in equal measure. A truck is driven into shallow water, its wheels still spinning as if denial could float. Artillery pieces are turned toward the sea, barrels dark as guilt. Someone laughs, a short, cracked sound that surprises even him. The Luftwaffe returns in intervals, punctual as tide. Each pass redraws the beach. Craters fill with water, water fills with men, men with silence. You help carry one to the dunes. his hand still clutching a tin of cigarettes that have lost their reason. When it's over, gulls resume their ordinary business. At night, flares hang above the surf, bleaching everything into temporary truth. The sea reflects them without judgment. Boats wait beyond the breakers, some grey and official, others absurdly small. The horizon flickers like a pulse learning to calm itself. The miracle that refused the word. Morning begins with engines, again, always engines, but these belong to boats, not bombers. From the east they come, trawlers, pleasure craft, lifeboats painted by hand. Each hull carries a name chosen long before war and unwilling to change it. Greta, Rescue, Our Nellie, the Skylark. They look too fragile for the task, yet the task seems to make them stronger. You wade out until the water grips your knees. Cold. Real. It smells of rust and forgiveness. Around you, men form queues that curve with the tide. Patience becomes doctrine. Discipline becomes prayer. A destroyer looms nearer, black hull shining with salt. It cannot come close. The depth betrays it. So the smaller craft ferry men to it in shuttles, each trip a heartbeat across chaos. Voices overlap. Commands, jokes, hymns, all half swallowed by wind. From above, another raid begins. Tracer lines stitch the air. Columns freeze and then resume as if choreography could save them. A soldier near you falls forward into the surf and drifts face down, mouth open as though still explaining something. No one moves him. The tide will. When the bombers leave, the sound lingers, echoing inside skulls like aftertaste. A chaplain kneels in the sand, draws a cross that the next wave erases. Faith and sea understand each other. They both keep secrets. Hour after hour, boats come and go, each bringing absence back to England. By nightfall the beach smells of oil, rope, and the ache of survival. You sit among men whose faces are no longer young, though morning had insisted they were. Somewhere behind, France continues to burn without audience. Those who stayed behind. Not everyone boards. Some hold positions at canals or crossroads to buy the rest a few more heartbeats. They know the sea will not remember their names. That is enough. In a farmhouse cellar near Gravelines, a captain writes one last report by candlelight. The wax pools like melted hours. He lists his men, his ammunition, his apologies. Then he folds the paper, presses it between two bricks, and exhales. Upstairs, boots trample. Voices switch languages. The candle flutters out with a sound like consent. Elsewhere, a nurse tends to the wounded who could not be moved. She hums something without melody, perhaps to remind herself that air can still be kind. Outside, footsteps recede. Inside, the drip of water from a cracked pipe becomes a clock that no one will reset. The next morning, the wind changes. It carries the smell of salt away and brings in the smell of surrender. Flags change hands. The beach, scrubbed by tide, looks innocent again. Only the footprints, thousands upon thousands, refuse to forget which way they were facing. The sea keeps its secrets. 4 days afterward, the Channel keeps bringing things back. Helmets, planks, letters sealed in tin boxes. Fishermen find rifles tangled in their nets, seaweed wrapped around trigger guards like forgiveness. A boot washes ashore with sand already taking ownership of it. On the English side, trains deliver survivors to stations that smell of tea and disbelief. Some weep at the sight of home. Others stare at their hands as if they've returned with strangers' skin. One man, still damp from salt, says he cannot sleep because silence feels too loud. Another confesses he cannot stop listening for engines. From London, voices call it deliverance, miracle, proof of destiny. The men who were there simply call it enough. They remember the line of boats under the moon, the shuffle of feet in cold water, the taste of diesel on prayer. They remember waiting, not for victory, but for the sea to decide. And the sea, wise in its indifference, decided to lend itself, just for those 9 days, just long enough for escape to rhyme with survival. Then it went back to being sea again, grey, ancient, unbothered. You stand now at low tide, years later. The sand is quiet, but if you listen closely, it hums, a low resonance between past and horizon. Wind combs the dunes into new shapes, erasing and rewriting. The gulls circle as they did before, as they always will. And in their cries, the war feels both over and unfinished. Chapter 4. The Line That Broke Backward. The city that held its breath. You arrive in a city that still insists on manners. Paris, early June, streets washed the night before, as if cleanliness could postpone consequence. Cafés set out chairs because habit is stronger than fear. The river smells of iron and lilac, stubbornly spring. Somewhere, a radio plays Debussy, his notes wandering through open windows like birds that have forgotten migration. Above the bridges, the sky has learned discretion. It glows without warmth, pretending neutrality. The air carries a sound too, even to be peace. Trucks, distant, measured, inevitable. Every street corner seems to listen for them. You walk past bookshops already half empty, shelves like ribs. A boy chalks a hopscotch grid on the pavement, skips one square marked with a cross. His mother calls him inside before she says why. Church bells ring at the wrong hour, trying to keep courage on schedule. Somewhere far south, another line breaks. Somewhere nearer, a map folds itself in resignation. At the ministry, blinds rattle in a draft that no one will admit is panic. Documents shuffle between desks like leaves, pretending they can change the season. A clerk stamps each with a neat red circle. Urgent. Nothing inside those circles will matter tomorrow. Orders written on air. In a chateau near Tours, the government still calls itself government. Telephones ring. Telephones die. Lines cut, reconnect, speak in static like ghosts learning diction. Generals gather around a table that groans under maps already obsolete. They argue about time, as though time were an ally that could be negotiated with. You stand in a doorway, listening. Words collide. Armistice, continuation, defensive perimeter, honor. Each falls heavier than the last. Someone mentions the lawyer as the next line. Someone else murmurs, "There are no more lines, only delays." No one disagrees aloud. Outside, rain begins, first soft, then insistent. It taps on windows like fingers demanding entrance. A young officer folds his orders into his pocket without reading them. He already knows what they say. Withdraw. Protect civilians. Burn what you must. Fire, once again, becomes policy. The corridors smell of damp paper. Typewriters rest with their keys raised. Small metallic soldiers awaiting purpose. You imagine each key bearing a letter of farewell. At dusk, a messenger on a bicycle passes a convoy headed the opposite way. He salutes no one. No one salutes back. Even gestures have grown tired. Paris without sound. When the order finally comes to declare the capital open, the words themselves seem embarrassed. Open, as if the city were a door offering welcome rather than surrender. Night before occupation. Street lamps dim. Bridges whisper to the river, promising not to remember. The metro sighs one last train through tunnels thick with breath. You walk along the Seine. The statues wear rain like armor. Some faces on posters are torn, others look determined to remain intact. A baker kneads dough for the morning. He refuses to call it routine. A woman in a blue coat feeds pigeons with deliberate care, as though mercy still counts when measured in crumbs. At midnight, the sirens that once warned of air raids sound again, this time not to alert, but to announce. The city listens, still pretending not to understand the language of endings. Before dawn, columns approach from the northeast. Engines murmur with the confidence of inevitability. Boots strike rhythm on cobblestones polished by centuries of parade and revolution. Windows open an inch, then close again, as if light itself were treason. When morning finds the city, it does so quietly. No gunfire, no resistance, only the weight of sound withheld. Flags change on buildings with the politeness of theatre set changes. A soldier pauses to photograph the Eiffel Tower, his shadow stretching across cobbles once meant for joy. Voices in the dust. Elsewhere, trains fill with people carrying smaller and smaller pieces of their lives. Southbound, westbound, any direction that feels like a way. A mother counts her children by touch. A teacher clutches a roll of attendance sheets, absurd proof that names once had order. At a wayside station, a priest blesses both sides of the platform. He has stopped asking which direction is safe. Overhead, the same sky that watched Dunkirk now watches this. It has learned patience. It has seen repetition. On a rural road, you meet a line of cavalry, horses thin, eyes wide. They move at walking pace, the past itself passing through the present. An old man doffs his hat. The officer nods but doesn't slow. Even respect has learned to economize. By evening, rumors travel faster than trains. Some say the government has fled south. Others say it will fight from Africa. Others, that the war is already over. Each rumor carries a piece of truth, but not enough to build on. They drift like leaves that have forgotten which branch was theirs. You camp by the roadside, near a field that still smells of wheat and petrol. Someone lights a cigarette. Another mutters that it's safer not to. The flame flickers, briefly honest against the dark. You stare at it until it dies of exhaustion. The surrender that whispered. June 17th. The announcement crackles over radios that have outlived their batteries. An appeal to cease fighting, an armistice to end suffering. The word suffering lands heavier than all the others. Men remove their caps. Some curse. Some simply nod, as if the inevitable has finally shown its credentials. You sit on a stone wall, the countryside humming with insects that have no interest in treaties. A boy passes with a bucket of water for refugees. He spills half, drinks the rest. Even thirst feels divided. In the towns, flags change again. Some hang limp, others flutter like reluctant confession. The air smells of dust and diesel, surrender's twin perfumes. Church bells ring once, uncertain of the hour. That night, under a pale moon, soldiers burn documents, letters, photographs. Flames lick faces, make them younger for a moment. Someone plays a harmonica, slow, halting, almost tender. You realize it's the first music that hasn't come from engines in weeks. At midnight, the wind shifts north, carrying smoke toward the coast where waiting once meant hope. Now it means memory. After silence. Days later, Paris resumes breathing. Shops reopen in cautious imitation of life. Children, those who remained, kick stones that used to be shrapnel. A painter sets up his easel by the river, mixing grey with grey. The canvas shows water, bridge, reflection, none of them accurate. You walk past the Hôtel de Ville. Flags unfamiliar flutter from its roof, their shadows crossing cobblestones like questions that will not age. An old woman sweeps her doorstep, murmuring, "At least the dust is ours." Evening drifts in with the smell of coal smoke and bread. For a moment, the city almost remembers itself. A violinist plays near Pont-Neuf. The notes tremble, then settle, as if the instrument too must learn new loyalties. Above, clouds move east, slow, unhurried, disinterested. The war has changed their names as well. You pause on the bridge, looking down at the river. It carries fragments of wood, a single shoe, the reflection of a flag you'd rather not see. The current slides on, smooth, detached, fluent in forgetting. And as night gathers, the lamps flicker one by one across the embankment. A city rehearsing how to sleep through occupation. A people learning the art of waiting without hope. A world exhaling before its next breath. Chapter 5. The Voices that Refused to Vanish. The First Whisper. It begins, as most endurance does, with a whisper, a word carried too softly to be dangerous, too stubborn to die. A leaflet slipped under a café saucer. A name scratched on a wall in pencil meant to fade, but doesn't. Paris breathes again, but it breathes differently. Short, careful, through the teeth. Posters bloom overnight in new languages. Each corner smells of glue and fear. You walk past one and keep walking, but your eyes return. The face on the poster smiles with the confidence of occupation. Below it, someone has written a single word, "Non." It is small enough to be erased, large enough to matter. In the metro, conversations occur in fragments. "We heard." "They arrested." "Keep your head down." The rails hum like nerves under the city's skin. Somewhere above, church bells ring out of habit, each note testing the air for consequence. The whisper grows by repetition, by rhythm, by need. By the time it reaches the countryside, it has learned to travel by bicycle, by rumor, by ink that dries fast. It does not yet call itself resistance. It calls itself something to do when silence hurts too much. Paper wars. You find yourself in a cellar that smells of damp and defiance. A typewriter sits on a crate, its keys polished by conviction. 3 people lean over a candle, student, printer, teacher, each breathing the same shallow air. Pages feed through the machine, one after another, warm with urgency. The words are simple. France lives. The printer inks a stencil with trembling hands. Outside, footsteps echo. No one speaks until they fade. Then the machine resumes, faster now, as though speed were armor. Bundles of pamphlets leave through back doors inside bread baskets and bicycle panniers. At dawn, they bloom across the city like a rash the occupiers cannot cure. On walls, on benches, in pockets of trams, paper replacing pride. One morning, you see a child pick up a leaflet and fold it into an airplane. It glides a few meters before landing near a soldier's boot. No one moves. Even the wind holds its breath. The soldier bends, reads the words, and kicks the paper into the gutter. The airplane wins by existing. Voices on the air. Across the channel, another kind of whisper learns to cross water. London, 1940. A small room lit by static and belief. Microphones like black tulips bloom before exiles who have not forgotten how to speak. Their French is clipped by distance, but their sentences find ears back home like raindrops finding windows. "Here is London," the voice begins, calm as if reading weather. "France has lost a battle, but France has not lost the war." You hear it in a shuttered apartment, volume low, curtains drawn. The sound crackles, distorts, returns. It's not perfect. Perfection would break the spell. Each word carries over hundreds of kilometers, each vowel an act of trespass. Neighbors pretend not to listen. Afterward, they all sleep a little lighter. The occupiers ban radios. People hide them behind books, inside bread ovens, under floorboards. At night, attics glow faintly blue as dials turn to forbidden frequencies. The city hums again, not with engines, but with expectation. Networks without names. The resistance does not begin with flags or leaders. It begins with errands. A loaf of bread delivered too late. A bicycle trip that detours through the post office. A farmer who leaves a barn door unlocked. Small gestures form a nervous system across the map. Messages written in milk, invisible until warmed by a candle. Passwords disguised as greetings. At train stations, women selling newspapers pass tiny notes folded into coins. You help move one such note, address, date, nothing more. You tuck it into your sleeve, heart pounding louder than footsteps. On the bridge, soldiers smoke and laugh. They do not notice you. That is your victory. In Lyon, in Toulouse, in Marseille, the pattern repeats. Circles of trust, always too small, always large enough to matter. Some are betrayed, others endure. When one falls, two more rise in its place. Every wall has ears, so the resistance learns to speak with eyes and silence. A glance means tonight. A cough means wait. A song whistled twice means safe. Language reverts to heartbeat. The price of sound. Inevitably, the whisper is overheard. Arrests come at dawn. Boots, torches, the sound of furniture learning to protest. Paper burns, names vanish. Courage hides where even fear forgets to look. You sit in a cell that smells of lime and memory. The wall opposite bears 100 initials carved by predecessors. You add yours not out of vanity but companionship. Outside, a truck starts, stops, starts again. It will carry someone else tomorrow. In another part of the city, a train departs under cover of darkness. Windows are shuttered. Station clocks refuse to tick. A single guard looks away. Resistance survives him because he looks away. The next morning, your name is erased from the registry, but not from the air. A comrade remembers your story and tells it in code through a radio 3 countries away. Your voice, disassembled into wavelengths, still travels. Echoes through years. By 1942, the whisper has become an orchestra. Sabotage sings its percussive rhythm, rails loosened, telegraph poles severed. Leaflets conduct the melody. Radios carry harmony across static. Each act small, each act cumulative. You walk through a forest near Limoges where the ground is soft with pine needles and secrecy. Partisans hide in the undergrowth, their tents patched with parachute silk. A fire burns low, almost polite. Someone hands you a tin cup of coffee brewed from chicory and nerve. The taste is terrible, and therefore precious. Above, planes drone toward Germany. First bombers, then later supply drops. Cylinders fall trailing silk, bringing weapons, hope, and sometimes more questions than answers. The men and women who catch them look skyward with gratitude and weariness. They know the wind can change allegiance without notice. In villages, church bells ring twice at strange hours, signals disguised as superstition. Resistance spreads like roots, unseen but relentless. Even silence begins to feel crowded. The unseen march. One night, in a safe house near the border, you listen as messages arrive by code. Dots and dashes tap through the room like rain. Someone writes them down, turns them into words, words into actions. Blow up a bridge here. Hide a pilot there. Each instruction measured, efficient, almost tender. When dawn comes, you step outside. Mist curls over the fields. The world looks newly invented. For a moment, war seems far, as if it too must rest. Then a shot rings out miles away, reminder and refrain. You look down at your hands and realize they smell of ink, smoke, and rain. The three elements of survival. The return of the voice. By 1943, the voice from London has multiplied. Women now speak into microphones, their tones steady, precise. Les Français parlent ex français, they begin. Then come phrases that sound like nonsense but ignite movement. The swallows will nest again. The tulips are blooming early this year. Each is a signal. Each carries weight measured in lives. Somewhere in a garret, a family listens, knowing that comprehension itself is treason. They write the phrases on scraps, memorize them, burn the scraps. Knowledge becomes ash. Ash becomes courage. When the voice ends, the room remains full of its echo. Outside, curfew whistles blow. Inside, hearts answer. The quiet that glowed. Winter again. Snow falls softly over occupied fields, covering footprints faster than they form. In the forest, resistance fighters huddle under tarpaulins, guns oiled, eyes hollow with cold. They pass around a radio the size of a lunchbox, its antenna trembling like a reed. The announcer's voice breaks through static. All the clocks are waiting. They smile. They know what it means. You realize that every act, every whispered phrase, every sheet of paper has built toward this. Not victory, not yet, but endurance as rebellion. The snow muffles everything except breath. You close your eyes and hear the heartbeat of a country learning to survive itself. When morning comes, frost outlines the trees in silver veins. A new leaflet prints its first page in a hidden room. A transmitter warms to life. A woman pedals through dawn with messages hidden in bread. The war continues, but so does the whisper, and between them lies the thin, luminous thread called hope. Chapter 6. The Turning Wind. Whispers of change. It happens first in the weather. The wind that used to come from the east now drifts the other way, softer, carrying salt and something like rumor. In cafes, people lift their heads without knowing why. The air feels restless, alert, as if it too has overheard news. You sit by a window darkened with blackout paper, a candle guttering in its glass. A man at the next table folds his newspaper twice before speaking. "They've landed somewhere," he murmurs. No one asks where. The word landed is enough to rearrange every breath in the room. For months, the sky had been a lid. Now it leaks possibility. Radio fragments hint at bombings in far cities, factories burning, generals replaced. A child asks what counteroffensive means. Her mother says it's when courage remembers its address. In the countryside, farmers notice contrails heading the wrong direction. At night, trains rumble toward borders no longer sure of their loyalties. The air smells faintly of rain and aviation fuel, a mixture the heart learns to translate as hope. The weight of waiting. Hope is not light. It is heavy with what came before. Every rumor sits beside a memory of betrayal. Every smile is measured, rationed like sugar. You walk through a village near the lawyer. Shutters still closed, but curtains flutter, tiny rebellions of fabric. A poster orders calm. Beside it, someone has drawn a small arrow pointing west. Even chalk dares again. The local priest rings the bell twice, once for vespers, once for something unnamed. No one attends the first. Everyone hears the second. In the fields, the wind combs the wheat in one direction only, toward the sea. A woman peddling home from market carries bread, onions, and a rumor that American soldiers have been seen in North Africa. The bread grows lighter with each retelling. By evening, the rumor weighs more than the loaf. Air that remembers thunder. That night, the bombers return, not theirs, ours. Engines roll overhead like distant surf. Windows tremble. Hearts answer in rhythm. From attics and fields, people watch the sky paint itself in arcs of flame. It is beautiful and unbearable. The bombs fall far away, but the sound travels home like prophecy. You stand on a hillside, coat pulled tight, eyes fixed on the flicker at the horizon. For the first time in years, the darkness belongs to someone else. It feels wrong to feel joy at destruction, but the emotion is not joy. It is release. Each explosion writes a syllable across the night. Return, return, return. In a barn nearby, a hidden radio crackles alive. Enemy loss is heavy, the voice says, clipped and foreign. Someone whispers, good, then crosses himself, unsure if faith allows that word tonight. Letters that found their way. Mail still moves, even in war. You receive a letter that has traveled through censors, through chance, through kindness. It bears a London postmark and the scent of damp ink. Inside, a few sentences from a friend thought dead. He writes of convoy nights, of salt spray frozen to railings, of courage measured in coffee and frostbite. He ends with 5 words. We are coming back soon. You read them until they blur. All over occupied Europe, such letters circulate like contraband hope. Some are forged, some intercepted, some real, none wasted. Each one adds a new color to the gray palette of waiting. Children in schools draw ships instead of landscapes. Teachers let them. Even imagination can be resistance. Shadows in uniform. The occupiers feel it too, the unease, the slipping. Their voices sharpen. Their eyes travel further before returning. Checkpoints multiply. Curfews tighten, as if darkness itself could be handcuffed. You watch a patrol march down the boulevard, boots rhythmic, expressions unreadable. One soldier glances upward when a cloud passes. For an instant he looks like a man remembering weather from home. Then the line moves on. Propaganda posters grow larger, their smiles more desperate. They shout promises no one believes. Even the glue begins to peel before morning. The wind, meanwhile, keeps blowing west to east, carrying dust, pollen, and something intangible, the faint electric scent of change. Signals in the fields. Summer 1943. In the meadows near Chartres, haystacks double as beacons. Lanterns flash once, twice, then darken. Far above, a plane circles, unseen but certain. Parachutes bloom silently, pale flowers opening in night air. Crates land with muted thumps, radios, rifles, chocolate, morphine. Men gather them quickly, bury silk, whisper thanks to sky and wind. You help carry one box into the woods. It is lighter than fear, but heavier than trust. Inside, packets stamped from your friends in England. The phrase feels both formal and intimate, like a handclasp through glass. Dawn finds the field empty except for the scent of trampled grass and engine oil. From the farmhouse nearby, a rooster crows late, bewildered by secrets. Voices growing louder. By autumn, the resistance no longer whispers, it breathes in chorus. Sabotage now scheduled, messages now coded but confident. Every train derailed is a heartbeat closer to return. In Paris, leaflets no longer hide. They are handed openly, daring confiscation. Students chalk words across bridges. Liberté, bientôt. Police wash them away before noon. By evening they reappear. Hope has discovered multiplication. You meet in a cellar where walls sweat moisture and courage. Maps sprawl across tables. Pins bloom like small red wounds. Someone says, "Next year may be June." No one asks, "Of what?" The air already answers. Winter between storms. Winter 1943–44 arrives brittle and suspicious. Coal runs short, ration cards thin, yet spirits thicken. In cafes, waiters hum forbidden songs beneath their breath. In factories, workers sabotage subtly, machines that stall only when inspectors visit. Even the Seine seems to flow with more intention, dragging ice toward the ocean as if delivering a message. You write in a notebook kept hidden under floorboards. Someday this will be history, but tonight it is heartbeat. Ink freezes on the nib. Still, the sentence finishes itself. From London, the radio's rhythm changes. Fewer speeches, more silence between them. Everyone learns to hear what isn't said. Something vast is gathering breath. The promise in the wind. April 1944. The wind no longer whispers, it declares. Ships mass along foreign coasts. Pilots memorize skies by star. Even the gulls seem to migrate westward, impatient. Messages flood the air. Poems, proverbs, nonsense phrases that mean everything. The long sobs of violins, the announcer says. Every ear that hears it trembles. Every hand finds its task. You stand on a hilltop at dusk. The horizon glows faintly, not with sunset but anticipation. Beneath the wind's roar, you can almost hear engines warming far away. The war that once seemed endless now has an edge, sharp and golden. It is the sound of the turning wind, the exhale before storm, the breath before liberation. You close your eyes. The air smells of rain, salt, and distance. All across France, hearts tilt in the same direction. The waiting, at last, has begun to end. Chapter 7. The Day the Sky Opened. The dawn before. You wake to a sky that doesn't belong to June. It is heavy, grey-green, taut as canvas stretched too tight. The air smells of salt and static. Somewhere far out at sea, thunder walks on water, but it keeps time too evenly to be weather. On the Normandy coast, fishermen still mend nets by habit. The sea has moods, they say, but not intentions. This morning, though, the horizon looks deliberate. Gulls cry in patterns. Waves arrive with strange discipline. And beyond them, faint as breath, a sound gathers that has no right to come from the sea. You stand in a field above the cliffs. Mist combs the grass flat. The wind has forgotten which way is shore. It carries the same note you heard years ago in reverse. Engines, many, endless, patient. 4 days, rumors had multiplied. An invasion here, a diversion there, perhaps never. Now rumor becomes pulse. The sky ripples, low and wide. Somewhere behind the horizon, a generation exhales. The water that remembered men. At first, they appear as shadows, darker shapes moving on dark water. Then the shapes acquire edges, hulls, wakes, spray. The sea itself seems startled to bear so much purpose. Wave by wave, the line grows teeth. Inside each craft men crouch, faces ghostly under helmets slick with salt. Some pray, some joke, some grip photographs until the edges soften. The air smells of oil, damp wool, and nerves. Someone hums a song with no words. No one asks him to stop. At 5:30, the horizon blooms. Light flares, sound arrives late, and the world rearranges itself into shock and smoke. Coastal guns answer, slow and angry. The sky writes chaos in every tense. You watch from the bluffs as landing craft crawl forward, hesitant, brave. The first touch the sand. Some do not. Men spill into surf that rises to their chests, rifles held high like small, proud flags. A few fall before they can stand. The water, once indifferent, becomes crowded with history. Somewhere a chaplain kneels in foam, his prayer drowned but not wasted. Another soldier wades ashore carrying a stretcher instead of a weapon. Bravery looks nothing like the stories promised. It looks like movement that refuses to stop. The air above. By mid-morning the sky is an occupation of its own. Parachutes drift like pale seeds, thousands, filling the light with dissent. Each one carries a story that hasn't started yet. Villagers wake to the sight and think, for one blessed second, that it's snowing. On the fields behind the beaches, the wind makes applause through the grass. Cows run in slow confusion. Barns tremble. A farmer's wife stands at her door, a hand to her mouth, the other gripping the frame. When the first paratrooper lands in her orchard, she drops to her knees, half in prayer, half in disbelief. He smiles, mud on his teeth, and says the only French he knows, "Bonjour, madame." History bows its head and keeps moving. From above, the sky finally opens. Bombers trace paths across clouds like pen strokes correcting the past. Fighters dive, rise, vanish. Silver punctuation in a long sentence of liberation. The roar is endless, but beneath it lives another sound, the low, continuous rhythm of a world beginning to turn. On the ground. The beaches earn names they never asked for. Omaha, Gold, Juneau, Sword, Utah. Names like passwords, like promises. Each one becomes a chapter written in wet sand and smoke. You walk behind a medic dragging a stretcher. The tide retreats, then returns, taking nothing it can keep. Empty helmets bob like buoys. A sergeant yells something you can't hear. His voice dissolves in the wind. You bend to help a man whose uniform is soaked with both kinds of salt. He grips your wrist hard and whispers, "Is it France?" You nod, though words feel inadequate for geography this sacred. Further inland, fields turn to crossroads, crossroads to resistance. French villagers emerge cautiously, carrying bread, wine, questions. One man kisses a sleeve patch as if it were a relic. Another points west and says, "They're still fighting there." No one stops moving. The road smells of petrol, sweat, liberation. Dust rises like incense. And through it all, the wind blows east, steady, persistent, carrying the sound of engines deeper into a continent that thought it had forgotten their meaning. The view from the other side. A German soldier, 19, watches from a trench half buried in sand. His hands shake as he reloads. The metal burns from overuse. He has not slept since Sunday. He does not hate. He fears, and the fear is older than ideology. When his gun jams, he stares at it like betrayal. Around him, comrades shout, die, vanish. He crawls toward the sea out of instinct, not strategy. The water receives him coldly. He looks up once, sees the sky veined with parachutes, and knows the war has changed shape forever. Later, he will be captured, handed a blanket, offered water. Someone will tell him it's over. He will not believe them, because it hasn't ended inside him yet. The long afternoon. By evening, the beaches are layered in contradiction, triumph and wreckage, joy and grief, life and its echo. Engineers clear mines while priests give last rites. Medics stitch and bury in the same rhythm. The sea laps gently, pretending it hasn't seen a thing. You walk among the landing craft, now grounded in tide's retreat. Inside one, a helmet rests on a bench beside a cigarette tin and a folded photograph. The man it belonged to is already elsewhere, but the objects keep his place in the world. Further up the dunes, soldiers build fires from broken crates. Flames lick the twilight, defiant. Someone opens a tin of peaches and passes it around. Sweetness tastes revolutionary. Laughter comes hesitant at first, then real. Liberation has found its voice, and it sounds like breathing. Night on the shore. Darkness returns, but it's a different dark. Not occupied, not fearful, just night, ordinary, alive. Ships flash signal lights across calm water. The reflections look like constellations reborn. Stars appear one by one, no longer enemy navigation but promise. On the far cliffs, villagers light candles in windows facing the sea. Each flame is a greeting, a thank you, a prayer. From offshore, sailors see them and whisper back through Morse and memory. You sit in the sand, boots off, feet raw, hands shaking. The surf curls close, whispering against itself. In the distance, faint bursts mark battles still raging inland, but here the rhythm slows. Someone nearby begins to hum, an old song about home. Others join, quietly. The melody rises, simple, human. The ocean listens, and for once does not interrupt. The first morning after. When dawn comes, it feels unfamiliar. Light touches the sand with cautious grace, as though asking permission. Smoke drifts inland. Gulls return, unafraid. The beach is littered with remnants of both victory and cost. Helmets, rifles, letters, footprints. A corporal kneels beside a fallen comrade, removes his tags, places them neatly on the chest. Then he stands, wipes his face, and keeps walking. The living have inherited the duty of memory. Civilians appear with carts, bringing water, blankets, bread. A child offers an apple to a soldier who looks too young to eat it. They smile at each other, and the war, briefly, loses its language. You look out to sea one last time. The horizon is full of ships returning for more. The sky above them is vast, rinsed clean. After years of watching it close in anger, you see it open at last. A lid lifted from a world that can finally breathe again. Chapter 8. The March Through the Wounded Land. Roads that remembered. The road stretches east, scarred and magnificent. Convoys roll through wheat fields flattened by wind and war. Dust rises behind each truck like unspoken prayers. On the ditches, wildflowers bloom again, purple, yellow, defiant. You walk among them, rifle slung low, helmet tilted back. The air smells of rain and petrol and resurrection. Every mile feels heavier than its length. Each village passed is a heartbeat returning. Children appear first, always. They run beside the trucks, waving flags sewn from bedsheets, shouting words half forgotten by use. Liberté. Liberateurs. Women lean from windows, crying without shame. Old men remove caps they hadn't dared wear in years. Dogs bark themselves hoarse with joy. The soldiers wave, embarrassed by adoration. They are tired, mud-caked, sunburned, but their faces open like doors in summer. Each smile costs something, but no one minds the debt. Along the roadsides lie the skeletons of vehicles, burned, rusted, claimed by weeds. A bicycle leans against a tree, its chain still trembling from a wind that has learned direction again. The land looks both young and ancient, wounded but awake. The wind blows east, as if tugging history toward repair. Villages that waited. In the town of St. Lo, bells ring from a church that no longer has a roof. The sound floats through open air, perfectly round, refusing pity. People gather under the tower's broken ribs. Someone brings bread. Someone else brings wine that tastes of dust and celebration. A woman steps forward with a photograph pressed to her chest. Her husband's name was written on a list, then crossed off, then rewritten. She does not ask if anyone has seen him. She only says, "Welcome," and everyone understands the rest. In another village, liberation comes not with tanks, but with a bicycle. A courier waving a flag stitched from curtains. The locals embrace him as if he were a whole army. Within an hour, the tricolour flies from the town hall again. By sunset, someone plays an accordion. By nightfall, every window glows. You sit on the curb, helmet in your lap, watching people dance on cobblestones slick with rain. The music sounds fragile but certain, like a bird singing after lightning. For a moment, you forget how far there is still to go. The faces of freedom. In Paris, posters whisper of the advance. In Lyon, in Chartres, in Reims, rumors sprint faster than couriers. The occupiers retreat like a tide too slow to hide its tracks. As the columns approach, more civilians join, farmers on tractors, children on carts, priests on bicycles. They bring baskets, songs, and silence. The line between army and people dissolves into gratitude. You walk beside a woman carrying a loaf wrapped in linen. She offers you half. You shake your head. She insists. Bread shared becomes treaty. At a crossroads, a resistance fighter salutes, armband red, white, blue, rifle older than his smile. He looks at the convoy, whispers, "So it's true," and disappears into the crowd before you can answer. Everywhere, hands reach out, touching sleeves, faces, disbelief. Some clap, others simply hold on, unwilling to risk this being dream. Every gesture is a thank you translated into skin. But amid the joy, shadows linger. Windows boarded. Houses burned. Fields where silence still holds names. Freedom steps carefully among them, barefoot and reverent. The cost beneath the celebration. In the ruins of Cannes, liberation looks like exhaustion. Streets are open wounds. Walls lean in confusion. A cathedral stands roofless but unashamed, its altar still bearing a single candle unextinguished. Dust turns the sunlight gold. Pigeons circle as though counting survivors. You help clear rubble with a group of locals. Hands bleed. No one notices. Each stone lifted feels like apology. When a child finds a doll in the debris, the crowd pauses. The smallest relic resurrected. Later, you share soup made from everything and nothing. It tastes of onion, soot, and grace. Someone laughs at a joke too dark to repeat, and everyone laughs with them. Laughter, it turns out, is also a tool for rebuilding. A soldier sits apart, polishing a dented medal until it shows his reflection. He looks at it, shakes his head, pockets it again. The living have medals enough. The Road to Paris. August 1944. The dust of summer clings to uniforms, to hope, to sky. Paris waits, impatient, proud, afraid to believe. Radio messages flutter like birds over rooftops. The Allies are near. Inside the city, barricades rise from cobblestones. Men and women, students and clerks, arm themselves with courage and kitchen knives. They fight not for victory but for memory, to be present when their city wakes. You march with the column entering from the west. The air thickens with gunpowder and perfume, diesel and lilies. Snipers still hide in shadows, but even bullets sound reluctant. The city roars, a sound too large for streets. Bells, hundreds, begin to ring. Notre Dame, Saint Sulpice, Montmartre, all at once, as if heaven itself has decided to make noise again. People pour from buildings, crying, shouting, singing. Flags erupt from windows. Colors return to a world that had forgotten them. A woman throws flowers from a balcony. Petals stick to sweat, to tears, to rifle barrels. Children wave branches of chestnut leaves. An old man falls to his knees, laughing like a child. When the tanks reach the Hôtel de Ville, the square becomes music. Voices merge, indistinct but unanimous. You can't tell where anthem ends and weeping begins. It doesn't matter. The quiet after the roar. Night settles on a city too awake to sleep. Fireworks and gunfire confuse the stars. The Seine reflects everything, forgivingly. You walk across Pont Neuf, past couples who hold each other as if to confirm existence. Behind you, laughter and accordion chords drift over water. Ahead, the horizon glows with embers of battle still burning at the edges of liberation. In an alley, you find a woman chalking words on a wall, on lesser EUs. We got them. She underlines it twice, smiling, then vanishes into the crowd. Rain begins, soft, merciful. Chalk dissolves, but the meaning stays. Paris exhales. Every window a lung, every lamp a heartbeat. You think of the years that led here, of whispers, roads, rivers, silence. The sound of victory, it turns out, is softer than expected. It's the shuffle of feet on familiar streets. It's bread baking again at dawn. It's the hum of trams resuming their routes. The reckoning. Days pass. Flags stay up. Euphoria thins into work. Traitors are sought. Collaborators judged. Vengeance mistaken for justice. Freedom, it seems, must learn its own discipline. You watch a woman have her hair cut in the square, punishment for loving the wrong uniform. The crowd cheers, then quiets. A child cries without knowing why. The barber lowers his scissors. No one moves. Liberation blushes with shame. Elsewhere, trials begin, some fair, some hurried. Paperwork replaces bullets, but mercy remains rationed. The world rebuilds itself with trembling hands. At a café near Montmartre, you sip coffee for the first time in years. It tastes bitter, honest, alive. A young man at the next table writes a headline, Paris Free. He crosses out free, replaces it with breathing. Better. Bells at dusk. Weeks later, the bells still ring. Sometimes for weddings, sometimes for funerals, often just because they can. Each peel is a reminder that silence no longer rules. You walk through the Luxembourg Gardens at dusk. Leaves fall early that year, gold and red against grey statues. Children chase each other between benches where soldiers once slept. Their laughter sounds foreign and familiar at once. A breeze stirs the chestnut trees. It smells of soil and bakery air. The pigeons scatter, startled by nothing but freedom. You look up and see the sky clear and endless, as it had been once before the first engines. France is wounded, yes, but healing has its own radiance. You can feel it underfoot, in every stone warmed by sunlight that no longer hides. Chapter 9. The Shadows Left Behind. The morning after peace. You wake to quiet. Not the quiet of fear or expectation, but the fragile hush that follows applause. The city outside your window smells of bread again. Trams rattle through their old routes, ringing with self-conscious joy. People walk slower now, as if testing whether peace will hold their weight. The newspapers use the word victory in bold, black letters. It feels too heavy for the page. Underneath the headline, smaller words tremble: reconstruction, justice, return. Each one a door not yet opened. You dress in daylight that feels unfamiliar on your skin. The mirror reflects someone older than memory, younger than forgiveness. You run a hand over your face and wonder if you survived or simply continued. On the street, a boy sells flags stitched from leftover fabric. He waves one at passing soldiers, who smile but do not stop. They have seen too much celebration already. The sound of boots still feels like weather. A woman sweeps the pavement before her shop, humming softly. The tune is old, the kind that refuses translation. The broom moves dust and history in equal measure. The war is over, but endings, like beginnings, arrive in installments. The empty places. You visit what's left of the old villages on the road from Normandy. Grass grows through cracks where homes once stood. Windows gape at sky. Chimneys rise from nothing, stubborn monuments to domestic courage. In one field, rusted helmets rest like mushrooms after rain. Names are still carved into the metal, softened by weather, half erased by forgiveness. Children pick flowers among the debris, unafraid. They turn shrapnel into toys, ruins into playgrounds. The world insists on renewal, even when it doesn't deserve it. In a nearby church, sunlight filters through holes where stained glass used to live. Dust floats like incense. You kneel, not to pray, but to listen. The silence here is articulate. It knows every name, every promise kept too late. You find a small plaque by the altar, pour ceux qui ne sont pas revenus, for those who did not return. You trace the words with a finger. The metal is cold but steady. The air smells faintly of candle smoke and memory. Outside, wind moves through the grass like a sigh that forgot who it belonged to. The returners. Trains now bring people home, though home has become a hypothesis. At each station, embraces collapse under their own relief. A woman waits with a bouquet that wilts by noon, but she keeps waiting anyway. A child stares at a man in uniform, uncertain whether to call him father or stranger. You see them, lines of gaunt men stepping onto platforms, each one carrying silence like luggage. They blink against daylight as if it were accusation. No brass bands greet them, just the shuffle of shoes, the sobs that end too quickly. Some wear the uniforms of prisoners still. Some clutch papers stamped displaced. Some carry nothing at all. Each bears an invisible companion named absence. Cafés fill again, but conversations hesitate at the edge of memory. When someone asks, "Where were you?" the answers arrive as shrugs, deflections, smoke. Truth, after war, is rationed. You sit among them, listening. Every laugh contains static, every silence hums with ghosts. And still people smile, because smiling is how you convince the future to exist. The reckoning within. Justice arrives late and unsure of itself. Trials begin, uniforms replaced by suits, lies dressed as recollection. Witnesses testify in voices that crack under the weight of remembering. Some crimes find names, others vanish into paperwork. In a courtroom smelling of ink and fatigue, you watch a man deny the past with perfect grammar. He looks ordinary, almost kind. You realize evil often borrows the face of administration. Outside, crowds demand fairness louder than fairness can answer. Posters proclaim "never again" as if repetition were preventable by typography. But history, has good hearing. At night, you write in your journal, "We survived what we could, and punished what we recognized. The rest remains in mirrors." You close the book. Its cover feels heavier than its pages. The ghosts that stayed. They do not haunt with footsteps or moans. They haunt by resemblance. A face glimpsed on a tram. A voice behind you that sounds like someone buried in Poland, in Belgium, in France. Memory replays in flashes. An alley at dawn, a field at dusk, a pair of boots drying by fire. You learn to live beside them. They occupy corners, pauses, mirrors. Sometimes you greet them silently, as one would an old neighbor. Grief becomes conversation rather than interruption. In cafés, widows sit at tables for two, cups opposite kept full out of courtesy. At markets, old women count ration coupons out of habit, then laugh when they realize they don't need to. Children born during the occupation now run free through streets their parents still cross with caution. At night, cities hum, a low vibration of rebuilding. Crane arms rise where smokestacks once did. Factories learn to make bicycles instead of bullets. Every hammer blow is both creation and confession. But beneath the noise, the shadows remain, quiet and patient, as if waiting to see what humans will do with peace. The letters unsent. In a drawer, you keep letters never posted. One to a comrade lost at Sedan. One to a woman whose name you can no longer say aloud. One to yourself, written in 1940, promising survival. You read them sometimes, lips moving without sound. Ink has faded to the color of smoke. The paper smells of dust and hands long gone. You wonder what language forgiveness truly speaks, if it's spoken at all, or just lived quietly until it becomes invisible. You fold the letters, return them to their envelope, close the drawer softly. Even silence deserves privacy. A new dawn. Years pass without asking permission. Cities fill, children grow, photographs fade. The war becomes a subject, then a memory, then a museum. But mornings still hold that same hesitant light, the one that asks, "Will you do better?" You stand once more by the river, same bank, different century. The water glitters with indifference. Across it, construction cranes swing like metronomes of progress. A tram bell rings, clear and mundane. You smile, because the ordinary, after everything, is miraculous. Tourists walk by, unaware that the stones beneath their feet remember the sound of tanks. A couple kisses under the bridge where soldiers once hid. The world is forgetful by design. That is how it heals. But you remember, and remembering, you choose gentleness. That, you realize, is the only victory worth repeating. The wind returns. At dusk, a breeze rises from the west. It smells of seaweed and steel, like the morning of invasion long ago. But this time, the sound it carries is laughter from a riverside cafe, the clink of glasses, the low hum of music. The same wind that once bore war now ferries life. You close your eyes and listen. Engines are gone. Only bicycles. Only breath. Only the murmur of a city unafraid to sleep. Above, the first stars appear, cautious at first, then confident. Light where there used to be flame. Peace, you think, isn't silence. It's the ability to hear wind again. Epilogue. The fields remembered. Morning comes slowly, as if afraid to disturb what's finally still. Mist rests on the meadows where tanks once crawled. The wind moves through grass that has learned to forget the weight of boots. Somewhere a bird tries a note, hesitates, and then continues. The sky approves. You walk along a path that used to be a road. Its gravel has softened into earth again. Moss has filled the cracks. Where shells once fell, daisies bloom without ceremony. The air tastes of rain, soil, and distant bells. Sounds the living take for granted. Sounds the dead might have dreamed of. A farmhouse rebuilt in the valley stands half-painted, half-proud. Children chase each other around a well, shouting in accents too young to know war. Their laughter carries lightly over the hills. The sound of innocence inheriting ruins. In their play, no sides exist. Only the sun, and the simple desire to stay in its warmth a little longer. You pause beside a hedgerow. Its branches have swallowed bits of metal. Shrapnel turned to relics, rust woven into bark. Nature, it seems, knows how to keep memories quiet. A butterfly lands on one twisted fragment, its wings the color of surrender flags. You breathe, and the air does not recoil. Down the slope, a river runs where the Meuse once trembled under bombardment. Now it moves gently, unaware it was ever asked to divide nations or carry grief. Its surface mirrors the sky, and in that mirror you glimpse a world that remembers without bleeding. A shepherd crosses the field, dog at his heel. He nods when he sees you, not out of recognition, but kinship. All who walk here share something unspoken. Perhaps it's gratitude. Perhaps it's apology. Perhaps it's the simple relief that the world, for all its cruelty, still allows mourning. You reach a small stone monument by the roadside. Names etched in neat lines, each followed by a year that ended too soon. Someone has left a wildflower in the crack between stones, its petals trembling in the breeze. You kneel, not because you knew them, but because you know what silence costs. The wind passes over you, a slow benediction of air and time. Evening gathers softly. Light folds itself along the hills, turning fields gold one last time before letting them sleep. The world hums in its quiet rhythm, the buzz of bees, the creak of wooden fences, the almost audible sigh of history settling back into soil. You think of those who never returned, of those who did but never fully arrived. You think of how memory endures not as pain, but as texture, in the weight of stone, in the angle of light on ruined walls, in the pause before laughter at a table. A single bell rings from a church far away. It sounds neither sorrowful nor proud, just certain, the kind of sound that keeps time for the living. Night deepens. The sky glows faintly where distant towns have remembered electricity. You lie back in the grass and look up. Stars slide into focus, familiar as they were before the first siren. Somewhere among them, the echoes of engines, cries, and prayers have thinned to whispers too faint for the ear, but not for the heart. Peace is not the absence of sound. It is the moment when wind through leaves becomes music again. It is the quiet between one generation's story and the next. It is the space where names rest without needing to be spoken aloud. You close your eyes. The earth feels steady beneath you. The war that once shook it has fallen into memory. But memory, if held gently, becomes something else. A guide, a warning, a hymn. And somewhere beyond the hills, a train passes, its rhythm slow, forgiving, carrying people home in all directions. You listen until the sound fades, until even the rails stop trembling. Then you breathe once more, deeply, and let the world continue without you. Aftermath. The roads that remember. The engines are gone now. The dust has settled into the ditches, and the wind, having nothing left to chase, curls into itself and sleeps. The road lies open, bare and exhausted, its skin marked by tracks that lead in every direction but home. You walk along it slowly, boots crunching in the quiet, the smell of burnt petrol still clinging to the air. It is June 1940. The fields bloom as if the world has decided not to notice. The villages stand half awake, shutters drawn, doors tilted on their hinges, windows holding on to smoke. A bicycle rests against a wall, its wheels warped by heat. A loaf of bread cools in an oven that no one will open. Everywhere, the small evidence of life pauses mid-gesture. The invasion passed through here like weather, brief, loud, and strangely impersonal. What remains is not ruin so much as rearrangement, order without meaning, silence without rest. You reach a crossroads. The signpost has been twisted to point nowhere, its arrows stripped of names. A child's marble lies in the dust beside a cartridge case, one bright, one spent. The sky is gentle now, a pale contradiction to what it has seen. And yet, in this stillness, you can still hear the rhythm that broke it. Treads, engines, shouts, metal. Memory moves at its own speed. It refuses to surrender to silence. The French called it the drôle de guerre, the strange war, quiet until it wasn't. And when the storm came, it came too quickly for courage to keep up. Planes carved their signatures into the clouds. Columns of armor wrote sentences across the land faster than words could catch them. The old defenses cracked not from weakness, but from disbelief. No one expected speed to have such conviction. You stop beside a field where wheat bends evenly, untroubled by ghosts. But the soil remembers the weight of tanks, the brief tremor of surrender. Farmers will plow this ground again, but the blade will strike metal for years. Every harvest will lift the past in small handfuls, shell fragments, medals, buttons, bones. The war will end one day, but the earth will keep retelling it. You pass a farmhouse half collapsed. A clock still hangs above the hearth, its hands fused together at the moment the blast came. On the table lies a cup, upright, unbroken, full of dust. You think about the people who lived here, the sound of their mourning, the way the floorboards creaked before boots made them tremble. The blitzkrieg was never just strategy. It was disbelief made visible. It was motion turned against the human capacity to prepare. In Paris, the flags changed overnight. Cafés poured the same coffee under different orders. The city learned to whisper, to keep its rhythm even as the tune changed. Resistance would come later, quiet at first, like frost on glass. But for now, across fields and boulevards, France was a country caught mid-breath. You pause by a river. Its surface reflects the sky with unsettling accuracy, blue pretending to be peace. Bridges arch like questions that no one dares answer. A single boot drifts in the shallows, the leather softening, surrendering to time. War always ends this way, not with an explosion, but with the slow resumption of small sounds: water, wind, footsteps. The living finding their way back into the day. They will rebuild, of course. That is what people do. They will plant flowers beside burned tanks. They will repaint shutters and rename squares. They will teach their children the geography of loss in words simple enough to survive translation. And decades later, tourists will drive these same roads and remark on how peaceful everything looks. They will not know how much silence had to be trained to behave this well. The sun lowers behind a line of poplars, tall and watchful. Shadows lengthen across the road, the same road that once carried armies, now carrying nothing but light. You stand there a while, feeling the hum of the earth return to its old rhythm. It is not triumph. It is not even peace. It is something quieter. Endurance, perhaps, or grace. The kind that refuses to vanish, even after everything else has. Thank you for listening. You've been part of Echoes of War, where stories rise on quiet wings, and the past still circles above us, refusing to land. You've been part of Echoes of War, where stories rise on quiet wings, and the past still circles above us, refusing to land.